Okay. 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 Okay, so I'm just starting the live stream now. There has been some dynamics. Okay, so I'm just starting the live stream now. There has been some dynamics. I'm getting a bit of audio feedback here, just fixing that. Okay, there's been some dynamics on the signal. You can see here that just before I started the stream, DSS 26 in Goldstone, California has ended ranging to Chandrayaan 3. And so that could be indicative that they're preparing for the burn. I had a little bit of an issue earlier this evening. I had an unlocked SDR for some reason, and my Doppler data was not very accurate. So I'm just fixing that right now. So that's why I'm a little bit delayed in starting. So I'll leave this up for you guys to watch for a minute, and then I should, in a moment, be able to bring you up to date on the status of the Doppler data, which appears to be fine. There's nothing, there was an issue on my end. Had a SDR that wasn't locked to the GPS discipline oscillator, so the data it recorded was all wobbly. So got that fixed, and we're just working on just getting an update screen here tuned up so we can share the Doppler data as it occurs in real time, matched to the JPL Horizons data. I expect we'll see pretty divergent data because the data on JPL Horizons just models a flyby of the moon. It doesn't model the burn or the entry into the first orbit. But so what we're going to see on the JPL Horizon stuff is the natural Doppler curve as if Chandrayaan 3 was not going to burn. And then we're going to actually see it burn, obviously, because that's what they're going to try to do. And we'll see what we see. Okay, I seem to have gotten the Doppler glitches behind me, so we've got good data rolling in. We've got two receivers running here on S-band. One is on the what I call the Doppler frequency. It's just a very stable frequency that doesn't seem to be mucked with by the Earth stations in communication with it. I believe this is the propulsion module that's emitting this signal based on spacecraft ID numbers, but I'm not 100% sure. The other frequency that we're monitoring is the frequency where there was ranging. As we can see at present, the ranging has ended. The ranging is done by the ground station, which is currently in Goldstone, California, Deep Space Station 26. And it ended about, I guess, 20 minutes ago. So I don't see anything here other than the strong central carrier. So we could take a walk up and have a look at the other channels. There's not a lot going on here. See what we see. This is one of the other channels. Not a lot going on here. As you can see, the signal is rather weak. Just wait for a second, see if there's any ranging activity here. See anything? We'll head up to the next channel. Anything, it looks like there might be some wide data here. I'm not 100% sure. It's very weak. Open up the bandwidth a bit here. This is mildly interesting. That's rather inconclusive. Some weak carriers in there from years of staring at this stuff. There could be something going on there. They could be sending high bandwidth data. I don't know. We'll head back down to the TT&C channel, or the one where they range at. That's probably where we want to monitor, because immediately after the burn, they're going to be doing ranging to figure out how things went. So we'll set up on there and we'll just record, and we'll periodically check in. And there's a good strong carrier there right now, and as you can see, the signal from Chandrayaan 3 has significantly weakened as it's journeyed out to the moon. The Indian missions tend to be pretty conservative with the emitted power that they send, probably because they have relatively small antennas and they don't need them that large on S-band for TT&C work. So we'll get this set up so it's looking good again. And we'll do a pretty high rate integration here, so if it starts ranging again, we'll see it. Okay, so I've also got X-band set up. I don't expect a lot of success here, but this is the uplink frequency. You might be wondering, why am I listening on the uplink frequency? Well, there is a remote possibility we could get some moon bounce as the ground station antenna passes over the moon during the burn. So if they're remaining in lock with the spacecraft, because the spacecraft will be visible for the entire pass through the Lunar Orbit Insertion burn, we could see some reflections off the moon from the DSS-26. So I do have the X-band system tracking as well, and we'll just leave that here. We probably won't see much of it during this live stream because I don't anticipate hearing the reflections, because my X-band converter is not optimized for that low in frequency, but it does hear noise. It does hear tree noise and other stuff, so it is sensitive down there. It's just a matter of is it sensitive enough to hear those reflections off the moon. I don't have a lot of hope in that. Yeah, so I haven't been keeping up on the comments, so I should go have a look there. Any questions yet? So yeah, we'll just sit back and kind of keep an eye on things. Hopefully my audio is nice and clear, and yeah, we'll check in on the Deep Space Network. The last I looked, it was on DSS-26, but somebody's saying that it switched over to Canberra, which kind of makes sense. They probably don't want to do a transition during the burn, so they'll probably just lock to Canterbury, and that's probably why we lost ranging. Probably what happened there. I was busy getting the Doppler stuff sorted, so wasn't paying too much attention to what was going on with the Deep Space Network. Figured they can kind of take care of themselves. Okay, let's grab some more data. Get an update. And as you can see from that Doppler curve here, we expect an upward trend. You can see the frequency in hertz. So that should be significant and noticeable in this carrier. When it starts to happen, this slowly descending tone will start to rise. That's just from the natural Doppler expected, if it just flew by the moon. So what's going to happen during the burn should be divergent from that. But I would expect it to be noticeable. Just running the Doppler traction software right now. Got this curve updated. Takes a few seconds. Don't see anything too exciting there yet. Okay. Got the settings. We're fine. Okay. So we just sit back and we watch what's going on. Take it from there when the action begins. So I've got up on the screen right now, I've got a GMAT going on. And this is the JPL Horizons data centered around Lunar Orbit Insertion. So as you can see, that doesn't look like a very good lunar orbit that JPL Horizons is predicting. So that's the lunar flyby that Chandrayaan 3 would follow if it didn't fire its engine around Paraloon. Now, I've done a quick model here of an orbit. This is the first orbit, so this would be where the spacecraft would be on the after completing its first orbit. You can see here the effect of that. So this is what I expect the orbit to be. It's modeled on the Chandrayaan 2 mission profile, which this mission is following very closely. And I would expect it to behave very similarly. We can go back and have a quick look at the JPL Horizons data and see what we can learn about it. So right now I'm in, I've got GMAT set up into an lunar rotating frame in this view. Here's a lunar inertial frame. That one's not being used at the moment. Here you can see the altitude. So I've got it set up here. So basically the time frame shows you while the Chandrayaan 3 is in the lunar hill sphere as it's coming in, which is about 60,000 kilometers from the moon. So you can see it coming into Paraloon and then rising back out. And this is based on JPL Horizons data, which we know is not 100% accurate, because hopefully the mission will be doing what it's supposed to do and burn. So if it does, this is what we should see for altitude. You'll see the spacecraft go out to about 18,000 kilometers from the moon and then return back to about 115 or so. So this is the this time here is modified Julian date per GMAT, which is a bit different than standard modified Julian date. And then of course this is just altitude in kilometers. So this is the state vector over time plotted. Not really all that interesting, but this is really what you want to see. And as you can see, the plane of the orbit will be visible from Earth for its entirety. So for the first few days in orbit around the moon, it won't be eclipsed by the moon and blocked by it, which is good because they can do what they need to do. I believe at this first Paraloon, after the LOI, it will burn again if it follows the Chandrayaan 2 mission profile, and it'll further reduce this elliptical orbit into something much smaller, and then it'll carry on taking bite-sized chunks to get it down to a circular orbit around 115 kilometers altitude. Then from there, they can begin lander operation. So it's hopefully that will all proceed as planned, and we'll get some more data from JPL Horizon so we can see that. So let's get GMAT out of the way. A little bit of a Doppler update. Let's see where we're at. Do a bit of housekeeping here. My windows are getting a little bit busy. While we're waiting for the Doppler update, let's talk a little bit about what to expect with the burn. My understanding, the burn will probably be almost half an hour long, somewhere in the range of 1700 seconds. So if it is centered at Paraloon, then it's going to be a bit of time for us to watch that and start to see the divergence. Generally, the divergence will probably be mostly after the burn, but I would imagine we'll see divergence in the Doppler during the burn itself. We may also see signal changes depending on the attitude of the spacecraft that they want to obtain. They could have the spacecraft in that attitude already. I'm not 100% sure. But we may see some signal changes as well. So that could be visible on the waterfall here as more audibly. If you can hear the tone in the background, maybe the signal levels will drop. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, so I saw a couple comments there about the burn time. So let's have a look at the mission profile for Chandrayaan 2. Wikipedia's got a bit of a layout of the chart of it. So you can see here that first Lunar Orbit Insertion burn for the first mission was 1738 seconds to achieve this 1800 kilometer by 114 kilometer orbit. So it's an appreciable time to burn, and you can see the other burns coming up. They're going to be, long burns as well. So I guess maybe the rocket doesn't have a huge amount of specific impulse, but it seems to be enough for what they want to do. So you can see they have some details on the landing burns to change the orbits as they get lower and lower to get ready to come down. But yeah, this gives us a pretty good idea of what to expect from Chandrayaan 3, I believe. The other than slight differences in the geocentric phase of the mission, I think it's largely going to be in this ballpark. It might be slightly different. The apogee might be a bit different. Paraloon and apoloon will be fairly close. yeah, let's have a look at the other channel. Now, there's not a lot of activity going on here. There's just a strong carrier there now. It looks from the DSM data, I don't know how much we can really trust it, but it looks as if DSS-36 has stopped tracking. It's just aimed straight up, according to the data here. I'm not too sure how much stock to place in that. Yeah, it seems kind of odd. I don't see any evidence of ranging or other activities from a ground station here, so I guess it's not doing too much. Yeah, somebody asked if you can rely on a TLE. No, not at this stage. TLEs are only really good near the Earth, geostationary orbit, Molniya type high Earth orbits, stuff like that. Once you get about 50,000 kilometers away from the Earth, they start to not be too useful. When you get out to these kind of distances, things that a TLE model doesn't model very well start to influence things more. The TLEs don't model lunar gravity, etc. much anyways. They do deal with some of the perturbations, but they don't deal with the whole gravity model of the moon. That's why you need to move into something like GMAT or something else that has a much more refined system of dealing with all the gravitational models that are out there for all the different objects in the solar system. The TLEs are only good around the Earth. Yeah, seeing some movement from DSS-36. So maybe what we'll do is we'll switch over to the channel. We'll watch that for a bit. See whether there's some goings on shortly from the ground station. Maybe they're going to start ranging again. So right now the moon is certainly not at 81 degrees above Canberra. sorry, the azimuth's just correct. I'm misreading that. Okay, yeah, it sounds about right. So that 11 degrees, that is probably their safe horizon. They don't like aiming these guys too low to the ground because of the high RF fields that they can emit. And the dish probably has a minimum operational elevation. Well, I know they do. So it's usually around 10 degrees or so. And it depends on terrain around the site. So you don't want somebody up on the mountains getting irradiated by, you know, a huge ERP from one of these antennas. So we could see some activity here shortly. Push up this window and put it on the live stream. Our friendly neighborhood deep space dish is up to. If we start to see it transmitting, it'll probably go into ranging, and we'll see that effect on the downlink. Right now all it's doing is just, it's unlocked and just sending telemetry. We're not seeing the telemetry here because it's very weak, but that's all the spacecraft is doing at the moment. Yeah, so I would expect the 1900 hours to be the center of the burn. Let's have a look. We can kind of divine that out of the GMAT info. So what I'll do is I'll throw GMAT up and we'll keep an eye on what's going on. So we'll play around with this a little bit. So we'll go in here and we'll tell it to propagate for maybe a second. Which this should be right around the perigee or paraloon from the naturally occurring flyby that would occur if the Chandrayaan 3 didn't fire its rocket. So I would suspect that the burn will begin probably about 15 minutes before paraloon and will end about 15 minutes after. So the burn will be centered around paraloon because you can't create a, you know, the entire effect you want instantaneously because of the nature of the rocket and how much delta V it has and how much specific impulse it can give at any particular time. So it's not going to happen instantaneously. So they'll spread that out over the course of the actual burn. And it will average out. They may adjust it one way or another depending on what they're trying to kind of achieve. But that's how the burn will likely go. So we'll likely see it around 1330 UTC, some action from this. So let's get GMAT out of the way. Yeah, I suspect that the two spacecraft have been performing pretty similarly, particularly in Earth orbit so far. So I would imagine that the burn is going to be in the ballpark, let's just say approximately 30 minutes. So we don't entirely know, but we'll see. Just working on getting somebody the altitude of the spacecraft presently. Just do a rough estimate here. Just modeling up GMAT for... So at about 12:53 UTC, spacecraft will be about 4,780 kilometers about the moon. So it's a little bit further out than that. It's about 5,000 kilometers from the moon right now. So if you're thinking about this, you can look at the diameter of the moon, and so it's about a degree away from the moon. Or so. Still no action from the Deep Space Network. Those guys up to seem to be tracking. So they could be waiting to begin transmission. Maybe they haven't reached their minimum safe elevation. I know there's a bit of terrain around Canterbury's site, so I'm just going to go make myself a coffee and I shall return in a minute. Okay, here's our latest Doppler update. Another 15 or so minutes of data added in. So far, no big divergences from what JPL Horizons is predicting. So right now we would be just in a pure gravity model of the moon. Chandrayaan 3 is now well into the hill sphere of the moon, and it's primarily running on lunar gravity at this point. So we'll see how the spacecraft behaves. That's how the Doppler changes as we go through the burn. Like I said, most likely we'll see the divergence afterwards from the predicted Doppler. Somebody asked about the frequency changes. I'm not quite sure what we'll see. It'll just be a divergence. It'll be a change from what's predicted here by JPL Horizons. And I would imagine that divergence, because the rocket isn't hugely powerful and it's not just going to happen instantaneously. It'll be that 30 minutes or so. So the change from this trajectory into the new trajectory will take some time to be noticed. It's similar to what we observed in the Doppler from Chandrayaan 3 after all of the phasing orbit boosts that occurred. You can still use that earlier orbital model to keep your antenna kind of pointed at it even immediately after the burn. It takes time for that trajectory change to kind of like dominate the trajectory of the spacecraft. So that's what I expect to see here. We'll see the effects of the burn after the most readily afterwards, but we will definitely notice something. It's just a matter of how much. Still no action from our friends in Australia. DSS 36 is still tracking, slowly bringing its elevation up. So we'll see. We definitely don't see any ranging activity going on with Chandrayaan 3 here on the channel it uses for that. The tone you're hearing in the background, assuming you're all hearing it, is from the what I call the Doppler channel. Is the frequency that tends to stay stable, doesn't change very much over time. So I've been using it for the entire mission so far as our Doppler tracking channel. Another interesting question about communications with a spacecraft. So here's how it works. When you've got multiple agencies, or even within an agency, there's the guys that run the telescope or the tracking dish and run the deep space sites. And basically what they do is they receive requests from projects like Chandrayaan 3 or any other deep space mission for time on the telescope, and their operations managers plan all that out and create schedules for each antenna. And then what the deep space operators do is they simply aim the antenna and perform the lower level data collection and communications that they've been requested to do. Now, there may be real-time links with a mission control center where the project team is located, but the antenna itself is not being, the guys at the dish itself they don't really know what the data is. They really don't know what's being sent back. They're just taking the raw information coming from the project teams, and either it comes to them as a file that they send up, or they plug into the project team and they may allow it. Now, I'm not 100% sure what the Chandrayaan 3 team is doing, whether they have like a live connection and they're looking at the data in real time. I would imagine there's probably something like that going on. But that's generally how it works. So a team could request, that, the telemetry is collected from the spacecraft and maybe something is sent to it. But it really depends on the project and what the arrangements are. But that's generally how it works. The guys that work at the dishes that are actually controlling them and stuff like that, they're not part of the project teams. Their main responsibility is the care and feeding of that dish antenna, making sure all of its equipment is working correctly, is aimed on target, that they're able to collect the data from it properly, and also transmit it to it properly, and just keep all those systems going. And the project teams themselves, they have some higher level effect on the data flow, and they're dealing with their unique project information, which the guys at the dish really don't have much knowledge of or interest in, actually, because they're too busy just trying to keep the antennas working. Somebody asked about the round trip latency to the moon and back. Depending on how far away the moon in its slightly elliptical orbit, it's around 2.5 seconds on average. Amateur radio operators are doing it all the time when they're moon bouncing, sending radio signals to the moon and using the moon as a reflector, and they're coming back. And It's about 2.5 seconds. Still no action from our friends in Australia. Approaching the top of the hour, and I'll start another Doppler run here in a few minutes. As you may be noticing here on our curve, we should be expecting to head into the kind of the trough of this curve here soon, and then begin a Doppler reversal. When I say Doppler reversal, that's literally what it is. We're going in one direction, we're going down in tone, and you've been hearing that since I started the live stream, and you can see the tone was here, and it's slowly over this time drifted this few hundred hertz down. Then what we'll see is we'll see it just kind of stop for a little while, and just kind of loiter at the same frequency, then it'll slowly start to rise over this time span. Now, this is where approximately here at 1330 UTC, this is when the burn should begin-ish, and then we might see some slight changes and maybe get an indication, maybe see a jump in frequency. Usually when a spacecraft does anything that changes its line of sight velocity, and depending on the geometry, we're kind of seeing the spacecraft, because if you look at the plane of the orbit, yeah, let's discuss that. That's actually, the more I ponder that, the more interesting that is to talk about. Let's get our friendly GMAT going on here. Get the lunar approach script up. We don't have much else to talk about while we sit here and listen to a tone. So here's our script, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it do a day, so it'll plot the trajectory for a day. Then we'll have a look at this. So let's think about this for a second. So we're here on the Earth. We're looking at Chandrayaan 3 zipping in here, and it's going to do a burn at Paraloon. So the plane, what really matters to Doppler is the line of sight velocity and the change of it, because that affects the frequency. So if we're looking at this, the change in velocity that we're going to see in the line of sight, in other words, directly on the heading to the spacecraft from our point of view here at my dish antenna, is not going to be that great. So it's not like it's coming at us and they're firing the rocket to slow down by, a kilometer a second or something like that, which would greatly affect the frequency. What we're going to see is this is going to be changing the trajectory of the spacecraft at a right angle to us. So it's probably not going to be that pronounced as opposed to the original trajectory. And if we go and have a look at our expected orbit, we'll plot that for a day. So it's not going to be, it's not that different really. So there's going to be a velocity change for sure. We're only really going to start to see a noticeable change when the spacecraft starts to get out here, instead of it zipping off up there like it was before in this previous plot. So that would be kind of my prediction. What we're going to see is going to be subtle, and I could always run the Doppler here, but I'm being kind of lazy. I could run another script and blah blah blah, and throw another chart out. But I think a little mystery in our lives is good. We'll keep an eye here on our Deep Space Network guy. I'm kind of intrigued why they're not doing some last-minute ranging here. Usually they're all hot to trot about that. Yeah, so what's ranging? So basically there's a bunch of ways that you can measure the distance to something. So Doppler only tells you part of the story. It only gives you it gives you the range rate. In other words, the rate of change of the spacecraft's velocity to the receiving station. So to actually get the range to the target, you can do a couple of different things. One, you can build a big radar station and you can ping it. And that gets kind of challenging when you got things out around the moon and beyond. So the other way of going about it, and the more common way, is to use a transponder on the spacecraft. So what you do is the ground station locks with the transponder. It sends a signal. The spacecraft oscillator locks to that, and then they send a signal to the spacecraft that gets sent back to the Earth, and they repeat that signal over an interval that makes sense to the distances involved, and then they can determine by the delay, they can measure that extremely accurately, then they can determine the range to the spacecraft. So the earlier question, how long does a signal take to get to the moon and back, is actually very, very salient to this discussion, because if you know Chandrayaan 3 is so many seconds away, round trip time, and you are able to measure to many decimal points that time, then you can very, very accurately range to the spacecraft. And then they can use that in their trajectory analysis to accurately determine where the spacecraft is. It's unfortunate they don't have the ranging tones up, because you can see how the pattern repeats and repeats and repeats. Take a quick look at what's going on the ranging channel. Not much. Okay, so let's do another Doppler run here. What I'm doing right now is just reducing the raw IQ data from the SDRs to fast Fourier transforms. It's writing out a bunch of files. Exciting stuff. And then from there, we'll read those files, I'll plot them, and then extract the Doppler curve from that data. Then I run another script that glues the two together with the JPL Horizons model. Okay, high drama and the Doppler curve coming up. Not really, I'm just kind of joking. It is starting to flatten out as predicted. So let's get you guys a view of that. Oh, there's the latest, the greatest. So what's happening now is the spacecraft is getting very close to the moon, and its gravity is significantly affecting the line of sight velocity that I'm observing here from its cone, and that's where we're going to get this jiggity-jew in the Doppler curve. That's a highly technical word, jiggity-joo. Somebody's commenting about followers and that. Yeah, this kind of stuff isn't exactly riveting television. So it's more, you got to be pretty hardcore to want to watch a Doppler curve do this. Generally, most of this kind of stuff I just automate, and I come and look at the data later, study it. So, but this is highly interesting to a lot of people, and yeah, like it's kind of cool watching an event like this occur. I've been doing this for quite a few years now. The first mission I watched go to the moon was Chandrayaan 5 T1, their test mission, and it went to the moon. And as you may recall, brought back its test capsule, and they re-entered that, and then the orbiter module went back to the moon area and went out to the Earth moon L2 point, hung out there for a little while, and then entered low lunar orbit. I believe did a kind of like a lunar gravity mapping mission after that. So watched that one for years. Obviously LRO is very active in lunar orbit. Learned a lot from it. It had just looking at its Doppler curve over the course of an entire lunar day, which is about a month, you can start to see lots of astrodynamics in that and how orbits work. And that's really how you learn about this stuff, is, for me anyways, is just looking, studying what you can see. And a lot of it is like this. It's not an instantaneous gratification thing where you just see something spectacular. You got to look for a long time, collect a lot of data, and then that data starts to make some sense. And you learn stuff from it. Yeah, it depends. Like some of the stuff that I do live streams on, I generally pick things that'll have some kind of an event to it. Like when Lucy flew by the Earth, I was able to get obviously Doppler from that, but also be able to image it. It was clear here, and we were able to image the spacecraft when it was really close to the Earth, which was kind of cool. But yeah, all kinds of cool stuff. What does it cost to do this kind of stuff? It can be done relatively inexpensively. Most of my stuff, other than maybe the computers themselves and the SDRs, are home built, acquired through other amateur radio operators, that kind of stuff, and are generally junk. You can find used satellite dishes and stuff like that where people just give them away. So it's mostly time. So like a small basic setup you could probably do for well under $1,000 and get results. and you could probably do it with even less. I know there's quite a few people out there that do cool stuff with very, very, very little. So what's happening here right now is we're waiting for Chandrayaan 3 to begin its lunar orbit insertion burn. How we're going to try to observe that burn is through the Doppler effect. So right now, Chandrayaan 3 is approaching the moon, and these curves here show what's predicted to happen and what is happening. And when the rocket engine fires at about 1330 UTC, approximately, it'll fire for a correction about 1345. It'll fire for about 30 minutes, centered around 1400 UTC, to achieve lunar orbit. So we hope to see some pronounced effect in the Doppler effect, so we can observe the burn. As long as you don't transmit, I don't think there's any regulations about owning a receiver. If you don't own the transmitter part, you're usually pretty good. In most countries, anyways. And this is in response to a question about an amateur radio license. Yeah, I've spoken to a few amateur clubs in India over the years. I've given some presentations and shared some information with them. Where am I right now? Metaphorically or physically? I'm located in the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia, Canada. Yeah, it depends. For a live stream of the landing, I don't think I'll have a view of it. Based on the time that they've given out, the moon will be over top of India, so which I would expect. Something like that, they'd probably want to have their own dish on, and they can certainly time that to happen when they want to. Events like this in the mission, a little less, a lot less ability to time it, especially with so many mission events. So why is there a peak? It's just how the basically the observed velocities will affect the frequency. As it gets really close to the moon, you get this kind of like reversal of the Doppler occurring, or any other planet for that matter, if you look at how Doppler curves work. That's why you get these odd peaks and changes in direction and the frequency. Nope, the burn hasn't started yet. We expect it to begin about half an hour from now, I think. Yeah, somebody asked about the Deep Space Network and what they're up to. They're just tracking the spacecraft right now. They don't seem to be receiving anything from it or in ranging operations. Seems kind of odd, but who knows? I don't know what the mission plan is. So usually in the past, when I've observed like KPLO and other lunar missions, there's a lot of ranging activity that's happening around these times in the mission. But that doesn't necessarily mean they need to do it. So another question is, so who's controlling the satellite? I would expect that the ISRO is very much in control. They've probably uplinked commands to the spacecraft to perform the burn at a specific time and also perform any attitude changes that it may be necessary, etc. So I wouldn't be too worried about what's going on. Now, can someone else control a satellite? I know there is some consternation in some space programs around the world about security for the spacecraft, etc. But it would take a considerable amount of resources to hack or take control of a satellite, and also a considerable amount of knowledge about the systems. So I don't think it's too realistic, but some space agencies seem to think it's a concern. Somebody's asking me if I'm using GMAT on Ubuntu 20.04. No, on this computer I'm using 18.04. I do use it, GMAT, the newest version of it anyways, on another machine that's on 22.04. Seems to work fine. So when are they going to confirm? Well, the mission, I have no idea. I guess they would need to get some data, which I assume DSS 36 will do. after the burn. It'll probably start ranging immediately afterwards, and hopefully I still got good line of sight on the spacecraft, and we'll see some of that activity. And I would imagine they'll probably release some sort of statement. Once they get some telemetry from the spacecraft too, the spacecraft will probably have the ability to share what it saw as the results of the burn, length of time of the engine fired, etc. So I'm sure they'll have a statement out shortly after. They've released statements fairly quickly after all the other significant mission burns to date, so I'm sure we'll get something. Okay, so what's being displayed on the screen? Okay, so I'm going to use the pointer here. So this is frequency, the horizontal. So time, the vertical. So you look here, every second approximately, this updates with another bit of data about in time. You can see as I move my cursor down the clock there, it gets earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. So this is now up here, and this is, a few minutes ago. So, and this is frequency. So this is the center carrier of the Chandrayaan 3 channel. Here is a couple of data sidebands and a spurious carriers off to the side here. I've noticed over the last half an hour or so that the signal has come up, probably 3 or 4 dB. This here is just an artifact of the SDR. It's called the DC spike, partially suppressed on this one. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the actual, you're hearing, this is the carrier here. I've turning that to audio so you can actually hear the frequency shift. And it's slowly starting to drift up now, as we'll see when I run this latest bit of Doppler data for you. So let's do that update and get you the curve. So people that have been watching for a while have probably noticed that this has drifted down, and now it's slowly starting to drift up. I know, this is riveting television. You've tuned into this. Okay. Getting another Doppler plot update ready here. There you go. And everything is tracking pretty nicely to the natural Doppler that's been predicted here by JPL Horizons. I wouldn't get too worked up if we're starting to see maybe a little divergence. That's more than likely just that the model isn't quite perfect. And when you get this close to the moon, things are a little bit less than perfect. Slight divergence away there. Very slight. But you can see on the plot that this pitch of this tone has changed following what we're expecting it to do. So let's go back and have a look at GMAT here. That's approximately right now, a couple minutes ago, where Chandrayaan 3 is located at. We'll just rotate things around. You can see the trajectory there. That's approximately the view that we would get from Earth. Going on with our friends over at the DSN? Not much. Do a little bit of a confirmation on the other channel. Oh, looks like something's going on here. There was a significant change in power output, and it looks like it's started to range again. So DSN now is up to its usual shenanigans of not reporting stuff in a timely manner. It's not doing anything else. So we'll keep an eye on it here. But yes, was a change in something or other happened here. And it has started to range yet again. Pick up the gain a little bit. See, these are the ranging tones. And you'll start to see this pattern. You can vaguely see it here. They'll split into two, and they'll slowly go out. See them here. So this looks like and I'm also hearing the tone on the other channel has faded off. Oops, sorry, that's the X-band. Okay, so we've gotten a much weaker signal. So this implies to me that the spacecraft is changing attitude. No, it's not developing attitude, it's just changing its orientation. So something is afoot. So what I would expect to have happen is what they want to do is they want to burn off a little energy as they approach the moon, so they'll enter an orbit. So they'll probably fire the rocket along track to decrease its speed so that it'll drop into the lunar orbit. So they probably are performing an attitude change right now. They probably fired some small gas thrusters on the spacecraft to change the orientation so they can get the rocket motor in position to fire it. This is why the signal, I mentioned this earlier, that we would likely see a decrease in signal strength. I'm going to change polarization just for giggles here. Okay, I've just changed to left-hand circular polarization, and the signal has come up. This is kind of interesting. On this channel, AMSAT DL did some tests the other day that I saw, where they concluded that this channel was linearly polarized, and it's clearly, well, right now it appears to be circularly polarized. I just went from right-hand circular polarization to left-hand circular polarization, and it significantly changed the frequency or the response accordingly. So we'll leave it in left-hand circular polarization for now. Let's have a look at the other channel now that we've got a bit stronger signal going on. Okay, so we definitely have some activity going on here. Ranging appears to be occurring with what? I am not sure. Maybe an ESA ground station? That's a possibility. I'm not sure which one. Maybe one in Australia. We can check that. Checking that right now. Oh, they're busy with something else. That's not ESA. Increase the gain here so we can get a little bit. If you watch the waterfall up here, or watch the actual plot up here, you'll see the ranging tones lit about. You know, they're doubled there. They kind of make this neat little geometric pattern. There's a pretty good display of them earlier. Okay, so just to summarize, we've had a polarization shift. I'm not sure why. It could imply an attitude change of the spacecraft. Maybe we're seeing an entirely different viewpoint of the spacecraft from these antennas, and they have different polarization. I don't know. Something definitely changed in a. You could see it here. This is me switching over. There was this, and then there was this. So there was some kind of change at the spacecraft that occurred with respect to its signal level and the polarization of its signal. It's still not quite as strong as it was, even in the different polarization. I don't think this is anything to worry about. It's definitely not something to be concerned about. Everything seems to be fine. I would expect some dynamics to occur at this stage. Okay, so if I'm not responding to your questions quickly, it's because I'm just checking things and running stuff. So okay, since our little glitch there that we saw, I'm just running the Doppler numbers now and get the curve updated. So it seems like we burned off a little bit of signal level. Here's the updated Doppler curve. A little bit of noise in there from the switch over of polarization. So we're getting very close to when I would expect the burn to begin. Chandrayaan 2 had a 1700 second plus burn. I would imagine this mission will have a very similar length of time. So nominally that would set the burn up if the ISO claim is 1400 UTC. I would nominally suggest that that is plus or minus 15 minutes or so. So the burn should be beginning in the next few minutes. I suspect the signal glitch that we just observed was probably the spacecraft performing some sort of attitude change, probably lining itself up to get its rocket engine in position in the correct orientation for the burn. we are seeing the spacecraft ranging with something. Still nothing from DSN now, from DSS 36. But that doesn't mean that DSS 36 isn't in the game. It's entirely possible. I'm not sure what the elevation of the moon is in India right at the moment. Maybe one of the viewers here could look that up, see whether the moon has risen there. That'd be interesting to note. DSS 36 is definitely tracking Chandrayaan 3, but something is actively ranging with it. Return to the primary channel for Doppler tracking. Keep an eye here. Now at some point I may need to adjust the frequency. I'm going to try to minimize that. I may just open up the I'll probably just do that, but it'll make it harder to hear the tone. You can see here the signal is again slowly. I'm going to switch polarization, and it's still favoring left. We'll leave it there. We are definitely getting a bit of a fade now. What I'll do is leave that here. The filter, easier to hear, and I'll adjust frequency if necessary. That won't affect the Doppler data, it's being recorded separately. Okay, just had to go grab my tea, and we're back. So we're approaching (1343) UTC. I would suspect that we should probably see the burn begin shortly after 1345 UTC. Ranging operations appear to be continuing. We are getting some QSB, which is radio speak for fading on the signal. At this stage of the game, the spacecraft could be conducting minor adjustments and getting itself orientated just so. Don't know. We do know that a few minutes ago the spacecraft did suddenly and abruptly change polarization of its radio signal. It went from right-hand circular polarized to left-hand. This seemed to be a consistent thing, at least on the two channels that we're monitoring. We're not paying too much attention to the other two channels at this point. Update the Doppler here, take a slow to get it processed. With the last curve from a few minutes ago. So nominally I would say that the burn should be beginning any second now. Next few minutes at most. Let's recall that Chandrayaan 3 has engaged in a number of similar burns throughout the mission so far. The only difference on this one is it's arriving at the moon. Okay, signal levels are building back up nicely. Okay, let's get Doppler updated for you guys. Switch over to the ranging channel, and activity is carrying on there. Had a bit more time, I'd show you some examples, really clear examples of ranging, but that's not something I want to distract myself with. Okay, we have very strong indication on the Doppler, I'll show it to you live here, of a sudden change in Doppler. Okay, so let me get this on the plot for you guys. That out of the way. It's a problem with doing these things, you end up with so many windows open. Okay, so Alakazam, script running here, and we'll get you an updated plot. Yeah, there's definitely been a significant change in the behavior of the spacecraft. So I think we've got a pretty good bead on what's going on here. Everything seems to be nominal. The burn appears to have begun. at approximately 13:42:30. It appeared to have occurred around that time. We had that little fade that I noted earlier. I'm going to do another Doppler run right here. Okay, so the emission you're seeing right now on the screen is not from Chandrayaan 3. That is a low Earth orbiting satellite passing through the field of view of my antenna. So don't panic. It's normal. We'll go back to this channel so everyone can have a calm look at Chandrayaan 3 and not worry about some weirdness going on. Spacecraft passing through the field of view of the dish antenna are very common. There's a lot of them out there. Okay, I'll have the next plot up in a second. Okay, so this change in Doppler is definitely much more pronounced than I thought it might be, which is very cool. There's the raw stuff we just extracted. See that? I'll run the official curve. Okay, there's the official curve. I say official because it's just comparing it to something else. So it looks like we're getting a little uptick there, or something leveling right off. And just running the Doppler again. Takes a few tens of seconds to compile the data. I apologize, I'm not following the live feed right now with the comments. So if there's other knowledgeable viewers out there that can help with answering questions, that'd be greatly appreciated. Getting a bit of a signal fade again. So this burn appears to be centered a little bit early on the 1400 UTC nominal center time offered by ISRO. We remain in a signal fade. Signal seems to be still fading, and I'm almost sensing without the Doppler data that it might be decreasing in frequency again. Okay, get the next plot up for you guys. Okay, here's the latest. Seems like it's flatlined a little bit there. The signal you see passing through, that's a low Earth orbiting satellite, just happened to be scooting by. We're getting a considerable fade on the signal right now. I'm going to attempt a polarization change. Seems to improve things slightly. Just trying to keep up with things. Signal levels are still low. Okay, the next curve. We do see a pronounced difference. We see a step change occurring at approximately 13:42:30. And a step change from predicted Doppler behavior of what would have been a flyby. We're getting very weak signal now. I'm going to try another polarization change, see whether that helps. So we're obviously seeing rapid change in orientation of the spacecraft from our perspective. This does not imply that there's any kind of unusual activity with the spacecraft. As you can imagine, it's passing through the closest approach to the moon, Paralune, right now. So it's moving pretty quick relative to the moon. And its attitude is going to be changing because of the rapid change in velocity and the orbit, etc. It's nice having this feed on this dish where I can change polarization like this to deal with issues like this. Otherwise it would just be maybe a loss of signal. That's nice. Okay, I'm going to have a quick look at comments and see if there's any of them burning a hole in there. Okay, so yeah, just generally speaking, high-level summary. The burn seems to have begun at around 13:42:30 UTC. It appears to be occurring in a way that is not detrimental to the spacecraft. It's still able to send a radio signal and everything else, which is all positive stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have the JPL predictions for the actual burn, so anything we're doing really is a guess about the results of it. The checking here on the other channel is ranging with something as of yet unknown, probably DSS 36, and DSN now is just not posting the data for whatever reason, maybe some IT issue or something like that. I don't see any reflections from the moon on X-band. I guess I could run the numbers and check on S-band, but now would be the time to be looking there. We're getting a much better signals building up, and I'm going to adjust the audio pitch of the signal to compensate for the Doppler that's about to take it out of the range of my passband. That's why it's shifting. This will not affect the data that we're collecting. Okay, so let's get an update on the Doppler. So high level, for people that don't have a background to understand what this is all saying, I would say that the burn is occurring nominally. There doesn't appear to be anything in the data that we're seeing here to imply an unexpected result. The spacecraft should be passing through Paralune right around now. So its closest approach to the moon. I would estimate that to be approximately 115 kilometers from the moon. To give you an idea of what that may look like, I will bring up a quick graphic here. Okay, so this is the perspective from the Earth, zooming in on the moon. So Chandrayaan 3 is right around here. So it's just skimming over the surface of the moon about 115 kilometers up. And it will not follow this trajectory. This is the flyby trajectory that JPL Horizons data predicts. It will follow a trajectory similar to this. So if you could see Chandrayaan 3 around the moon, this is the Paralune, which is occurring right now. The orbit will look like this, as seen from the Earth. If you see the Earth here, and you can see what the orbital shape should be approximately. This is my estimate based on Chandrayaan 2 orbital parameters, so the Chandrayaan 3 will be slightly different, but not much. Everything seems to be carrying on as expected here. We'll do a Doppler update, see whether there's anything revealing in that. What is the current speed of Chandrayaan 3? Fast. Paralune, it will be moving at a pretty good clip. It's in the gravity well. So the signal levels are building again. They're not back to where they were. Just waiting for the Doppler data to reduce here, and we'll get our latest update. Just plotting it now, and I'll throw the live plot up while I do the official one background. Here we go. Do that a bit. And we'll run. Okay. The burn is expected to last somewhere in the neighborhood of 1700 seconds, which is approximately 1/2 an hour. So that would, with a start time of approximately 13:42:30, put us about 10 minutes past the hour or so. The burn should be complete fairly soon. Check out the ranging channel, if I can find it. Okay, we still have what appear to be ranging operations going on. It's hard to tell, the signal's still pretty weak. I'm going to do a quick change of polarization, see if that helps. It does not. As you can see, being so close to the moon, we're getting some fairly rapid Doppler frequency changes. I'm going to do a shift here. What you're about to hear is not the spacecraft changing, it's just me changing the local frequency. Keep the signal within the passband so you guys can continue to hear it. This will not affect the Doppler data that I'm collecting. Okay, just reducing the plot here. I'm going to bring up this screen a little bit. Okay. Nothing's changed my opinion on what's going on. Cool to see that pronounced. See the deviation from the predicted trajectory from JPL horizons. This little tick here at the end is just some kind of the extra pixel or so that's just depended on from the Doppler extraction. So this is what matters right here, and as you can see, there was the sudden change in the behavior indicative of that's probably when the burn began. We are probably either have concluded the burn or it will be concluding shortly. And you can see the deviation. Now, we'll probably do some further Doppler analysis. It'll take me a little bit to do to get the model built up. Use the lunar orbit model and start to fit that. But as I mentioned earlier, through the Doppler analysis, I will get a much better idea over time as the curve plays out, as the new orbit kind of takes form, where the spacecraft operators will have the benefit of the ranging data that they're collecting to gather more insight as to immediately how the burn went. So that's what they'll be doing right now here. The signal level is rather weak. I'm just going to change polarization over and see whether we get an improved signal here or not. No. Just going to keep it on left-hand circular. That seems to be what it's favoring right now. We went into this right-hand circular polarized, and we're coming out of the lunar orbit injection burn left-hand circular polarized for whatever reason. Signal levels are slowly improving. They're not quite up to the levels they were when just before the burn began. Okay, we're approaching 30 minutes since we saw the what we presume to be the beginning of the burn. So I would probably expect that the burn is probably concluded now. See if we see anything in the Doppler. The latest Doppler, but definitely diverging from the trajectory of a flyby. And I would expect the Doppler to be more constrained. It remains in orbit rather than less so. This trajectory would imply that the spacecraft is carrying on in some new Earth orbit, or maybe even being flung out of the Earth-Moon system. I haven't modeled it that far. So the JPL prediction here is actually not correct. It's only modeling a lunar flyby for whatever reason. I have no idea why. It doesn't model a lunar orbit insertion burn or the first lunar orbit. I'm just changing the frequency so we can keep monitoring the signal's audio. There is some rapid fading occurring on the signal at the moment. Don't get alarmed by this. It's probably simply the spacecraft including its burn activity and perhaps reorientating its attitude. You can see some fading up and down there. Let's monitor that. I'm going to keep the polarization left hand for now until we get a prolonged fade. The signal seems to be building nicely. Okay, now a bit more fading. Recall we saw something similar before the spacecraft began the LOI burn. I'm going to attempt a polarity switch, or switching now. There we go. Yeah, I think we've had some sort of attitude or orientation change. Signal levels have come up considerably. Now we're back in right-hand circular polarization. I believe the spacecraft has reorientated itself. Whatever it was doing, or however it was orientated for the LOI burn, it seems to have returned to the orientation that it was in before the burn. Do another Doppler run. We seem to have stable signals. And while we're doing that, let's have a look at the ranging activity. The ranging tones, they're weak, but they're there. What's going on DSS 36? Still no indication that DSS 36 is the source of this ranging activity, but I suspect it is. I don't know what else would be. Being in the comments that ISRO has made some sort of statement that the burn was successful. Let's see what we find on social media. They seem to be using Twitter, or the site formerly known as Twitter, make such statements. Yes, I see it here. I'll post it on the live feed here. Have Twitter. So they haven't confirmed any of the orbital parameters yet, so we'll wait for that. The next burn, 2300 hours IST, August 6th. So that sounds about right period-wise, because the next burn will occur at the next paraloon. So let's pull up GMAT, have a look here. What I can do here is propagate to paraloon. And that sounds about right. So Chandrayaan 3 is in an orbit like this, around the moon. And let's not forget about our Doppler. So 2300 IST is about 1730 UTC. So as you can see here, my orbit is pretty darn close. Again, I imagine they're doing a nominal timing. The next burn will be not quite as long as this one, but it'll be another long burn. Okay. Didn't see any reflections on X-band. Signal levels on S-band are still good. I'm going to change the pitch here. And we'll carry on for a little bit monitoring. That's always the fun part of this stuff, is to gather more and more data so you have enough to really fit your models to later. Okay, just getting the latest Doppler plot, we're seeing considerable divergence now from the flyby trajectory that JPL Horizons had posted. Just going to have a bit of a look here and see if there's anything in the data that implies when the burn ended. I'll look at it in more detail later. So the next burn will not occur in view of me. It will occur with the moon a bit further west, and it will have set below my usable horizon. So I'm just going to mute the just changed up polarization again, back to left-hand circular. Seems to be favoring that now. The divergence in the Doppler continues to build. Once I take a nap this morning and get back up, I'll probably fit up a my orbital estimate to this Doppler data and do my own confirmation about what's going on up there. I've just switched the polarization back to right-hand circular, giving us a little bit of benefit. Do a quick rock over to left. Definitely right now. Just going to change up the audio frequency. I'll leave the Doppler summary. Somebody asked a question about where the moon is at. Well, the moon is right over top of the Pacific Ocean, kind of centered on Hawaii right now. So it might be just rising in India, but it's setting here. Southwesterly right now. So pretty good position for me observing the LOI burn this morning. With that, I think I'm going to wrap up the live feed. Congratulations to the ISRO for their successful entry of the Chandrayaan 3 stack into lunar orbit. And I will check in with you guys later on Twitter with the Doppler summary update. Fortunately, I lost a little bit of data before the LOI burn, but we've got the good data of the burn, which is all that really matters, and I'll have some really good data study and firm up on orbit. I'm surprised we haven't heard some sort of orbital parameters provided from the ISRO yet. Maybe they need a few more minutes or hours to kind of confirm things. So we'll see. I'll go have a nap right now. I've been up for way too many hours overnight here. getting ready for this, so we'll have a nap, and when I get back up, I'll have a hard drive full of data to have a look at. I'll update my GMAT model, and I'll come back and share some numbers with you guys. I know it's exciting stuff. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch up soon. And thanks for all the nice comments, everybody. I really appreciate the positive energy. It's one of the reasons I love doing this. Thank you. Have a good one.